Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway.
Welcome back, guys. I hope you've been watching the Olympics. We've been full on here, watching, listening, all the excitement. And Claudine's going to tell us a little bit about the artwork at the opening games, because I know you guys were probably all watching. And we're going to learn a little bit about what that all meant. And I'll let Claudine take it from here.
Yeah, there was so much. And of course, it's all sorts of controversy has come out about all of this, and most of it is all very misguided. And so I wanted to share some things that maybe a lot of people don't know about why some of the things that what you saw were there. And I thought it was amazing. I rewatched it again, the end of it, the last half of it. I think it was really long, but I watched the last half of it again, and watching it again, the first night I watched it, I fell asleep in the middle of it.
It was very long.
It was really long, and it was kind of like, okay, I've got the boats going down the river. We got this part, but it was actually fascinating. And then I even watched a documentary about the behind the scenes and how long they've been working on it and everything. And it's really fascinating, but I don't think a lot of people know why some of the things were done. And that's what we wanted to share with you all today.
Yeah, I had a lot of people reaching out to me being like, what was this? What was that? I don't understand, especially the blue guy, but the blue guy didn't even get shown in America.
Really?
Yeah, they never broadcasted him in the States.
Oh, well, then why is everybody freaking out?
That's
probably why they're freaking out, because the blue guy wasn't that, but we'll get to that one. But I want to talk about some of the stuff you saw that night. And honestly, some of these things, I have not found anybody talking about it online. And if they are talking about it, they don't have it right. So, you know me and spending hours and hours getting to the answer. But to start with, there was, if when you watched it, there was the torch bearer that was running through the city, and he was masked. And a lot of people are saying it was a character from the Assassin's Creed, which I think is a video game. But it was actually a character that was just kind of dreamed up, and it's of many figures. So it's the man in the iron mask. It's also based a little bit on the Phantom of the Opera. And then also Fantomas, which was, that's a very famous, huge, poster that was, I think it was a magician is when I've seen it used before. And then of course Arsène Lupin, which if you've watched the show on Netflix, Lupin, he's very much inspired by the French detective and was thief. I guess he was more of a thief. And then also the other one is, because everything's about the Louvre, was a ghost that haunts the Louvre, and his name was Belfargo, and he would go through the Louvre, and he was this legend that he haunted the Egyptian collection every night. He was a subject of a very popular book in the 1920s, and then it was a TV show in 1965, and in 2001 they made it into a movie starring Sophie Marceau. It's an evil, forgotten mummy that they found in the reserves of the Louvre, and he comes out and starts haunting people. And then the TV show, the 1965 version, he was killing people in the Louvre.
That's so funny. I never heard of that.
Yeah, I have not encountered a ghost in the Louvre yet. But when you racing down the Seine, before the final torch, was this, I think this was one of the coolest parts of the whole thing, was the silver horse that went all the way down the Seine. And this was something that they worked on for well over a year. And it's almost like a submarine down below that moved it through. So it looked like that horse was galloping. And then the figure on the horse is supposed to be I'm probably gonna say this wrong, but Sukana, and she is the Celtic goddess of the Seine, the River Seine. So nothing more, nothing less. She was not the sign of the apocalypse that some people are saying, but she was his Celtic goddess. And if you go to where the Seine starts, that's near Dijon, there is a statue of this goddess there.
I thought it was the same as the Assassin's Creed guy on the horse. It
No,
looked like the same character.
No, so that's who she was. That's supposed to be who it represented. So, which is kind of amazing because then it's it's the Sen, because the Sen was just as big of a character in this whole thing as anything else. And I love that when you see that character walking with carrying the flag, on the behind her, basically towards the Eiffel Tower, were those huge light up wings. So it's kind of like Winged Victory walking up there carrying the flag, but then when they hung the flag, they hung it upside down. Did you
Yeah,
catch
everybody was talking about that.
that? I mean, at least, it's not like if it was a US flag and you hang it upside down, it's like the sign of distress. But at least it wasn't that, it was kind of, but this is when my, 25 years of event planning, and I see that and I'm like, oh my, like that kind of stuff just makes me like, I just know that there's probably a lot of people in this instance just freaking out behind the scenes, like, no.
Yeah, exactly. What a nightmare.
Yeah. But one of the closely kept secrets in this whole entire last year or more was about the flame, who was going to light the cauldron and the cauldron itself. So many months ago, they had told us it was going to be in the Jardin des Tuileries in front of the Louvre, but we didn't know anything more about that. So there is a designer, Mathieu Luhanier, and he designed the torch and the cauldron, and he created something that will probably never be ever to be topped again. It is a hot air balloon, and it's with a very special nod to history, and it sits over a 23-foot diameter ring. But what is on there, it is not fire. It is actually created by EDF, which is a French electrical company, and is made of beams of LED light and a mist of water, and it's 100% renewable. So when you look at it, it isn't actually fire.
That's interesting because I was looking at because I can see it from my window up here in Walmart. And I was like, how are they putting that fire in the sky in the rain?
Yeah, so it's not really fire. So which is just amazing. And then they're trying to see if the designer really wants to petition the Louvre to see if they could keep it there forever, because the Louvre oversees and owns basically the Tuileries. But why a balloon is something you might wonder. Well, and this is another thing I keep seeing kind of not exactly accurately told. So this is Paris, and nothing ever happens by chance. So the heritage is taken very seriously here, as we know, thank goodness. And the balloon is a nod to an event that happened on December 1st, 1793. A gentleman he was a professor named Jacques Charles, created a hydrogen balloon. And on that date, from close to the very same spot that you see the balloon today, Charles and Nicolas Robert took off from the ground. They floated 27 miles. And while that happened, there was 400,000 people in the garden watching it, including Benjamin Franklin.
That's interesting.
And that was 400,000 was basically half of the population of Paris. So, of course, that was the first time you ever saw something flying, could you imagine looking up and seeing something flying through the sky?
Amazing.
When another test was done and the balloon went down outside, far outside of Paris, people started attacking the balloon with a pitchfork because they didn't know what it was.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah. But on the south wall near the entrance, and you might want to wait till after the Olympics to go find this, but at the entrance that goes into the Place de la Concorde, there's a plaque remembering this event that nobody, I think, ever stops and notices it, but maybe now they might see it a little bit more. But at that time, there was a race between Professor Charles and the Montgolfier brothers, and on September 19th, the brothers at Versailles in front of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette set up a balloon, and they wanted to put something living in it. And so they set it up with a duck, a sheep, and a rooster. And while Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI watched, the animals survived the flight, but the duck's beak was broken when the sheep sat on him as the basket was descending to earth.
Oh my gosh, those poor animals.
I know, I could use some round to this poor little ducky, but the sheep went on to live out their final days in the hamlet of Marie Antoinette. So he probably had a good little life. We don't know what happened to the duck and rooster, but
The sheep survived.
the sheep survived. On November 21st, so just 10 days before the flight that took off, the brothers set off their first manned balloon flight from the Chateau de la Muette and flew over the Tuileries, reaching its highest point before coming down on the Butte de Calais. On this flight were the first two French astronauts, is what they actually call them, the Marquise d'Arlandes and Jean-Francois de Rosier. Just 2 years later, Rosier died when trying to cross over the English Channel in a balloon. But the balloon sits over the eastern basin of the Tuileries, which also happens to line up with the Access Historique. It's a special line drafted by Alexandre Lenotre in the 18th century. It goes from the Bernini statue, or the horse statue where you meet your clients, of Louis XIV near the Pyramid of the Louvre, and is a straight line all the way through. So it goes to the Arc de Triomphe de Carousel, which is thankfully beautifully restored, to the cauldron with the balloon, to the obelisk, to the Arc de Triomphe, and all the way out to the Arc de la Défense. And this, of course, was not an accident that they lined all this up. And the other day, I was walking around, I think it was Sunday morning. It was our first day that we didn't have rain. And it was so clear and beautiful. And I have the most amazing pictures that I took from the horse, looking all the way down, like through the arc. You see like the Arc de Triomphe in the distance, you see the balloon, everything. It's pretty amazing when you see it all lined up. And of course, they did that on purpose.
That's really cool. I love that part of it.
Yeah. And every day now, and of course, you know this because of where you are, but every night until August 10th, from sunset to 2 a.m., the balloon rises up 197 feet, more than 18 stories into the air. And as I said, the artist is trying to campaign to keep the balloon and the cauldron in the Tuileries full time. Could you imagine if we got to see that every day rising up?
It's pretty cool. I was like, when I first saw it from my window, I was like, what the heck is that?
I know. Well, I saw it when when I did the video that I made in the apartments of Napoleon III. That was the day that I looked at and I was like, what's that thing in the garden? And then it was like, oh, 2 weeks later we found out.
Yeah, I think it's super special and something different.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, I'm going to go, it's so stinking hot here right now, but later on this week, I'm going to go down because I want to see it. And I mean, I saw pictures just over off of Rue Bonaparte on the left bank, and you could see it because it goes so high in the air. So one of these days I'm going to go when it cools down a little and see it go up at night. I can't wait.
Yeah, you got a little more time.
A little more time, but they did, you can't now, but you could have gone in. They were doing free time tickets online. And I tried when they first announced them. And every time I tried, it just said, oops, like the website's too busy. And they sold out of I think it's something like 300,000 tickets. Like they were going to let 300 people in for every 15 minutes. And they basically filled up all those tickets in no time. But you could see it for free from right above the little landing of the Tuileries, between basically the end of the building of the Louvre. You could just stand there for free and see it. And then, of course, see it at night. But it would be kind of cool if they left it for a little, maybe just through the end of the year, celebrating 2024.
Yeah, or at least for the Paralympics.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if they have, I mean, I would think that they still have, I mean, they were all a part of the running of the flame through everywhere.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
I don't know why they wouldn't leave it till September.
I know, they should just leave it up. But another thing is meanwhile at the Louvre, the characters of the painting, if you were watching it, jumped out of out of the paintings. So like the Raft of the Medusa, all of it had nobody on it. But it was really funny because when they do the way that they had it depicted, and it was obviously, they had some people dressed up, but then it was probably CGI. And they even had Venus de Milo looking out the window, but they have them looking out the window in the apartments of Charles X into the Cour Carrée, not the Seine. And I'm sure there's me and 4 other people that know this.
Yeah, just you and those 4 people.
I mean, I'm sure nobody else got that. Like, wait a minute, they're looking in the wrong direction. And then as the guy's running through with the torch, I'm like, that is so not the route, that you did not just go by that painting if that's the way you were going. But, we don't need to get too technical about that. But after that, during the ceremony, when you got to from the Pont Royal and then over in front of the Musée d'Orsay, there was some heads in the water. And these heads, as soon as I saw this was maybe one of my favorite things I saw, because they are some of my favorite paintings. So they have these heads that are like cardboard cutouts or whatever they are, wood. And I guess that the eyes actually moved. So somebody was behind them moving the eyes so that it looked like they would watch the athlete ships go down. So you're starting at the Point Royal. They are different women and one gentleman that are in paintings that are inside the Louvre. And the very first one is Madeleine, or it's known as the Black Model. And we did an episode about the artist. It was Marie Benoit. And she was, it's actually called The Portrait of a Black Woman. And it was painted in 1800. We probably did this in like the first year. It changed the landscape of art. Madeline was this beautiful Black woman who came from Guadeloupe when Marie met her, using the classic pose. She's sitting in this chair, like a very like typical Louis XIV kind of style chair. And she had studied under Jacques Louis David, and she has her, so she's this Black model, and her breasts are exposed in the painting, but she's wrapped in like a white dress. It's kind of down below her breast, but then the only other colors in the painting are blue and white. And this was partially because it was after slavery was outlawed for the second time. And this woman had been with her brother's family in Guadeloupe, but then she became like part of their family. So when they moved to France, she came with them, and she was just like basically like her aunt. And so it was the very first painting, they say, of a Black woman was done actually as a portrait. And it is a beautiful portrait, and I love seeing it. It's up in the second floor of the Sully wing, where not many people go, and it's this one room that is one of my very favorites. But it's also, done by a female artist, which there's not a whole lot of them in the Louvre. So I love that she is one that's there in the water.
Yeah, that's pretty special.
It's pretty cool. But I'll put links of this on the website and links to the past episodes so you can learn more about them. The next one is featured in a Georges de la Tour's painting. It's called it's the Cheater with the Ace of Cards. It was painted in 1636. It's of 3 grifters that are working to steal the money of this rich young man, and one of them has a ace behind his back. Our lady that's in the Seine was a courtesan. She had a red hat decorated with a huge ostrich feather and pearl drop earrings and a pearl necklace. And the pearls are the giveaway that she is a prostitute.
We love a courtesan. That's so fun.
We love a courtesan, but I also love this because everybody thinks pearls are so classy, but nope, they were a sign you were a prostitute.
That's good to know.
It's good to know, exactly. The next one is it's actually of a man. It was done by Muhammad Qasim, and it's a portrait of Shah Abbas the First. It was drawn in 1627. It's sadly not on the display at the Louvre. This drawing is of the Shah and his page boy, who clutches a wine flask near the Shah's lap. I'll let you figure out that maybe a little deeper of how that looks. But on the painting is a quote, and it says, "May life provide all that you desire from 3 lips, those of your lover, the river, and the cup." And I think that's so perfect. It's in Paris, and it's the Seine.
That's pretty good setup right there.
Just don't drink the water in the Seine. I wouldn't do that.
Awesome.
But the next one, and we did do an episode about her, and this is also one of my favorites. And there's two women, and this is of Gabrielle d'Estrées and her sister, the Duchess of Villars. There's still not a lot known about who the painter was. We do know that it was attributed to the Fontainebleau School in 1594. It is believed to be Gabrielle and her sister. And her sister, the Duchess, is holding Gabrielle's nipple between her fingers. This was a gesture symbolizing pregnancy. Gabrielle would have been 5 months pregnant with the future Duke of Vendôme, Henry IV's illegitimate son. In Gabrielle's left hand, she holds a ring between her fingers that was the coronation ring of Henry IV, a token of his love and loyalty. And in the background sits a woman that's sewing what they believe are baby clothes. So Gabrielle d'Estrées is known for this risque painting. And every time I go into the Louvre and I'm near this painting, you always hear people laughing of all ages when they see it or snickering. But Gabrielle and Henry, they had 3 children. All of them were later legitimized. They were together. You might remember when we did the podcast, because he had actually been with her cousin, who was the nun. Remember the Whores on the Hill?
Yes.
That's the family of Gabrielle.
I was just
The
thinking
Whores
about
on
the
the
other
Hill.
day.
Yeah, the Whores on the Hill, which we'll give more context in case you haven't listened. But they were there was the abbey up at Montmartre, and Henry, during one of his sieges, Henry IV, he and his soldiers would stay up there, and basically he was sleeping with all of these nuns and the head of the abbey, which was Gabrielle's cousin. And they were actually known as the Whores on the Hill.
I love this whole story.
I know, we love it. So Gabrielle, then when he finally met Gabrielle, it was love at first sight. But they were together. He was, his marriage to Margaret de Valois had not resulted in any children, and he obviously was getting everybody pregnant. So clearly wasn't him. So he was trying to get the marriage annulled because he wanted to marry Gabrielle, which everybody else was pretty against it because she didn't really come from any, sort of, fancy family or from another country. There was no, nothing good was going to come of this, when usually the marriages were all about linking something. And so he was getting the marriage annulled, and they were going to get married on Easter Sunday, which would have been April 11th, 1599. And so she came to Paris. She left him at Fontainebleau. She came to Paris, and she was very pregnant at this point, and she got very sick. They say that it could have been that she had eaten a frosted preserved lemon, and then she started having contractions and pain. She was 5 months along. The baby had already died inside of her. The doctors tried to do everything they could, but she died on April 10th. So the day before they were supposed to get married. She was just 26 years old, and Henry was devastated. He held a massive funeral for her at the Église Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois, right across from the Louvre. Basically fit for a queen. And he even had a wax effigy of her created where they would change her clothes 3 times a day. And he would sat and have dinner with her coffin every night for weeks.
Wow. I mean, the day before the wedding too, that's a lot.
I know. It's like, and most of the kings and stuff, they never got to actually marry anybody they, first of all, even knew before they got married. And so he wanted actually, he really loved her, and he really wanted to marry her, and she died the night before.
So tragic.
Very tragic. So I love those ones there. And it's also really interesting because if anybody knew, so you have a mistress, you have a courtesan, you have a young gay page, and you have what was a black servant at one point. And it's funny how now we'll talk about the next part where everybody's so offended. But if anybody actually knew what those were, they would also probably be offended. But here, this is just art, and this is just a part of our history and our story here in France, and everybody's just fine with it.
Exactly. No offense needed.
No offense needed. So at the next part, if you were watching at the Passerelle d'Abilly, I always want to call it a different name. but it was a fashion catwalk of performers that flashed across the TV screens in between athletes. And it started as the French boat went under the bridge. And this was kind of one of the last bridges before they got to unloading at the Trocadero. And so the day after, everybody on the internet thought it was The Last Supper by Da Vinci. And first thing, the Last Supper resides in Milan, but many of the armchair internet historians thought they had figured everything out, that this is what it was. But as we know from our past episodes, art has a long history of shocking people. You have Manet's Déjeuner sur l'herbe and even Delacroix's Liberty People are two very famous pieces that caused stir because they mix Greek statuary or Greek ideas in with contemporary figures. So just because a painting is a large group of people at a table, it does not mean it's the Last Supper. In the Louvre, you could find the largest painting in the collection, which is Veronese's Wedding Feast of Cana. And in Orsay, you have Thomas Couture's Roman Decadence, better known as the Roman Orgy. But both of these are big groups of people in front of a large table. And I overhear people all the time in the Louvre thinking that Veronese's painting is the Last Supper, and it's actually the Wedding Feast of Cana. It's when Christ turned water into wine. But just because, again, it's at a table doesn't mean it's the Last Supper.
Yeah, everyone was really upset about that whole thing, and also the blue guy was that part of the Feast of Dionysus? Is that what?
Yeah, so when you see the Last Supper in the Louvre, there's scenes that are depicted by French and Northern School painters. And Northern School are like Belgium, the Dutch, the Danish painters. The Rubens is one. So especially with the Northern School, it's just steps away from the Medici Gallery in the Louvre. There's two paintings dedicated to what is known as the Feast of the Gods, or the Wedding Feast of Thaddeus and Pele. And these two paintings, there's two of them, and around the table are all the gods. There's Mercury, the three Graces, Neptune, Apollo, the muses of Zeus, Athena, Mars, and Bacchus. And Bacchus is normally depicted with a crown of grapevines, as he is the god of wine, or Dionysus. So it's Bacchus is the Greek, Dionysus is the Roman. And so this is basically what the Olympics were doing. The organizers created it because it's based in Greek mythology, and the Olympics started in Greece. That's what it was. And I mean, honestly, I fell asleep for a minute, and when I woke up, I saw that blue thing on the TV, and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, it was like, well, everyone was like, what is that?
Yeah, I guess it's huge in Japan. I saw a story today about how they love it. They're actually making fondant little models of him and putting them on cakes that people are ordering and eating because they loved it so much.
That's so cute.
It's so cute. But it's just really interesting. And at the start of that scene, at the ceremonies, it flashed across the screen. It basically said like festivity. And so that kind of tells you pretty much all we need to know, because France loves a celebration, and you are meant to slow down, enjoy your coffee or your dinner with friends and loved ones, and have amazing food and wine and conversation. And that is kind of what they were showing in this scene. They also wanted to show every single, age, shape, size, ethnicity, everything. And that was a big part of it as well. The creators, they were really criticized about this, and a lot of Christian groups and even Catholic groups coming out and saying, how dare you do that with these, drag queens and depicting this scene. But that really wasn't at all what it was. The creators of the opening ceremony wanted to avoid the Paris cliche that has been created and regurgitated for decades. Paris is not Emily. It's not red berets. It's not the khaki trench coats, and it's not mimes. They wanted to teach the world that what Paris is through its history and its culture, which of course we think is amazing.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool and different and fun. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, it was amazing to see, using the Seine and the river, and everything that you got to see. There was so much secrecy to it. I've heard a lot of criticism about the American broadcast because there was so much secrecy. They didn't know what they were seeing. And they didn't really share anything that they saw. Like, here's the Musée d'Orsay and it's the Impressionists and things. I mean, I would have loved to have had that job to tell everybody what all this stuff is, but they also had so much secrecy around it. What can you do? But the thing is that, what I love doing, what I do, that we get to share these stories, or when I give tours walking around the city with people and getting to share the stories of Delacroix or where Monet lived, and being with people, a lot of times people that have listened to the podcast that know a little bit about that, which I think is so amazing. But I think one thing that this whole thing has shown us is that basically how bad it's become about the people have such short attention spans now, and they're getting their information from sources like TikTok, and they're getting it in like 3-second little, clips. And they're not teaching art education in the schools anymore. And it's not that art needs to be this elitist thing, but you could just learn so much about the world and life through art. And I think that is what's so important here, is the heritage and the art. And that is what they were trying to share. And there's so many people now saying, they would never come here again because of, they'd never come to Paris because of what it is. It's like, well, that's fine. But we are very lucky that we have people that listen to the podcast that want to know more about the history. And so it's great. I loved seeing that they could show, even the decapitated heads of Marie Antoinette at the Conciergerie. It was like, oh, okay, that's kind of creepy, but that's great.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's savage.
I think when they set off the red, the whatever it was, the confetti, the long pieces of like confetti, and I was like, okay, that's kind of gross. It's supposed to be like, after her head is chopped off.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we murdered her, yay!
But that's the history, they share the history, the good, the bad, and the ugly here. They share it. They don't try to, move it away or cover it up. And I think what they did to create a stadium, basically a massive stadium on the River Seine. And I was stuck basically in my neighborhood for 9 days because I was on the edge of the QR code and couldn't walk across the river unless I walked all the way down by Notre Dame. But, what you saw in the end of it, it was like, it was worth it. It was pretty great.
Yeah, I was really happy I watched it on TV because I heard a lot of people who watched it on the river. I mean, it was pouring rain.
Oh,
You couldn't
yeah.
really see much.
Yeah.
A lot of the
Yeah.
stuff on TV was not on the river, so I would have been really mad if I paid $2K for a ticket and then
Yeah, I saw somebody that they had 2 tickets at $2K a piece. And they were towards the very end, towards the Eiffel Tower, and they had one TV screen that wasn't even that big. And they were sitting there in the pouring rain, and they were like, we could have sat at home and had basically saw the same thing, if not more.
yeah, they would have saw more because a lot of it
Yeah.
wasn't shown. And I had a friend who offered an extra ticket last minute. And I was like, I think I'm gonna go to a bar.
Yeah, I mean, it was so rainy, but I have gone to the day after the opening ceremonies was the men's time trial cycling, and I love the Tour de France, and that's probably a sport that I know more of the people that are competing in it than any other one that's here right now. And I basically walked a block and was just stood on the street for like an hour and watched them go by twice, and it was so cool. And then I also went to the men's medal team or competition of the men's Olympics, of course, gymnastics. And just the way that it was like, you went out to the Bercy arena, and it was so easy to get there, and everything on the metro is signed, and you went there, and as soon as you get off the metro, there's signs of where you go and which entrance you need to go to. And getting to the entrance was just this fluid line of people. You never stood in line. They were all so friendly and so nice. I've gone to concerts like in small venues that were harder to deal with than this. And this was thousands of people. So, hats off to Paris for what they did. And as a recovering event planner, I could see flaws easily. And this was really, really well done.
Definitely. And now you guys know a little bit more about what was going on.
I know, and share it with people. And then you could get in fights with people and tell people what it's really about.
Exactly. Get the fights going, guys.
Get the fights on the internet and take one for the, team for art, the team art.
The team art. All
Yeah.
right, guys, make sure you head over to ClaudineHemingway.com to learn more and tune in next week.
Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, ClaudineHemingway.com.